exposed to the sunlight. So I just ripped them out, and I'm going to skin it all over, and I'm going to put new ones in. So you can see as well, we've got this repair here in the bow. Ended up being kind of an L shape, but that all works out. And these all are going to be finished off the same. Basically, the big thing was that we had to take the foam and smooth it down. I used the power plane to get the contour correct of the rest of the hull. Same with all of these. And so now we're just going to go ahead and continue on with the rest of our repair. So this is where your scraps of fabric are good to use. Simply, you want to cut it so that you have probably an inch of overlap all the way around. The wind is never helpful, but I'm working outside because it's finally beautiful. It's finally almost like spring up here in New England. Oh, that was way too big. Alright, doesn't matter. So there is the piece that I want to have. Now, like I said, I want to have a lot of overlap on it, and the edges will be glued down with paint, but the parts on the foam will be glued with glue. So the next thing, of course, is we got to get our glue out. Anytime you're working with glue, you're definitely going to want some of these vinyl gloves. I found these are the best simply because the glue doesn't stick to them the way it does to other types of gloves. Something about the vinyl, and it allows you to continue to clean it off and keep working, whereas other types of gloves I've had to just pull the glove off my hand. So got my Titebond 2, I've got my paintbrush, got my razor blade and my scissors. Won't need a crazy amount for this the way we do when you're rolling it on, putting the fabric on, because we're going to be doing this in smaller areas, so we're going to use the brush. Now, I've done this type of repair once before. It's on Sawfish number 4. I have not seen the boat in years since I've done this repair because it's in Florida. I hope in the next couple of months to be able to actually see the boat and tell you how it's going, but I have done enough other sticking and gluing that I can't imagine a repair like this would be any different than other things. And it's just simply you're painting onto the fabric, and you don't really want to get any on the already painted fabric surface. You just want to get it on the foam. And we're going for the, same, not too thick, not too thin, so we can see it through and we know that it's into all the little pockets. I didn't use the spiky roller on this. However, the texture that the power plane gave the foam is actually a very good one for this to be glued on. And as you can see, I didn't bother with these grooves that are around the edge. If you want a really smooth finish, you can. Lightweight vinyl spackle is like the perfect stuff for that. It doesn't really matter to me. It's not a flotation or seaworthiness issue. It's entirely cosmetic. And I'm just showing you worst case scenario. You're out in the wild, you've damaged your boat, you want to repair it. Well, that's kind of what I'm doing here. And then, like I said before, you want to be laying this on once you've painted your glue so that you know there's a good overlap onto fabric that is painted out there for a second. But yeah, basically you want to make sure that we have a good overlap all the way around an area that we can now use paint to actually adhere these edges. And you're just like when you lay the fabric in the first place, you're smoothing it off. I might probably go around and trim some of these corners afterwards, make them a little more rounded. But that right there is the first part of it. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start covering the rest of these open spots. Showing a little bit here about covering. I think I've shared this before. This is one of those tricks I do just to save a little bit of time and money. Instead of throwing away my rollers, I buy 1 foot long rollers. I cut them in half, and then I use one of these smaller size frames. And when I'm done, if I still have enough of the color left that I want, I just simply throw the roller in the paint bucket and leave it. That way the next time I need it, I have a roller ready to go. I can put it back in. I've been reusing this one for a while. As you can see, if you look in there, the paint is separated. I'm gonna have to stir it up. It's probably been a couple of years maybe since I've used this, but I've stored it in a good basement where it hasn't dried out, and it's actually ready to roll onto this boat right now. Just gonna stir it up and get it all laid out in the paint tray, and then we'll start painting those patches. Okay, so the biggest thing you got to do now, make sure you get the best adhesion possible, is you're going to use your 1-inch chip brush and go all underneath like this, any of these fabric patches that you have. Make sure it's a good wet layer, because remember the fabric likes to soak in some. Then you're just going to fold it back down. And of course, anytime you're working with paint and glue, old clothes you don't care about, old shoes, gloves, always recommended. So here we are working paint back underneath. And if this was just one patch, I could easily do it with just the chip brush. But since I have, as you can see on this hull, quite a few, I'm going to go ahead and use my cut down roller, just simply because it covers a whole lot more real estate at once. So in any edge like that, you want to get as much paint up under there as you can, and then of course work any wrinkles down and out. Now, obviously don't have too much paint packed on top, but since we're going to hit this with the roller will definitely take care of extra paint, because it will work it out to the edge. But you know, I've been working at this for a couple hours, and that glue is already dry, because this is it's a hot day, but it's not very humid, and the glue glues quickly into the fabric, dried to the foam. Now we're just doing our edges here. So this is just like when you were originally painting your hull, if you already have, or if you're doing a teardrop trailer. Catch that. This came out a little bit thicker than I planned. But a good thick coat, because you want to make sure that that fabric is filled with paint, because that is your real waterproofing for this hull. When you push down with the roller like that, going towards the paint, you're actually thinning out how much is in the roller itself, which is good. And then you just want to keep rolling it until you can leave it sit for a little while and the paint is completely absorbed. I don't know, I'm going to try rolling a second coat here onto most of the bottom of this hull, because it has been so abused. But when you're doing the fabric, you want to make sure that any places where glue has dried into it, if it's a piece you've worked with before, or any hems, seams, anything like that, you've cut them away, so that it gets rid of potential lumps, places that won't stretch around the corner of a hull or whatever. And the simplest way to do it is just cut them all out. I mean, I've actually gone through and ripped the seam open and unfolded it before to try and get like an extra ½ an inch, but I don't know if it was really worth it. I didn't soak that well good enough. So soaking this down, that is your trick, is your paint for your fabric overlap is your glue. Your paint is your glue. It's not the Titebond 2, because Titebond 2 and paint don't stick together as well as paint and paint do, especially if it's the same type of paint. Now in my case, it is Glidden exterior paint. I have tried other types. I've never been as satisfied with them as I am with the Glidden paint. I've tried Bear, I've tried the Ralph Lauren or whatever they sell at I think Olympic. I've tried. Bear turned out to be the worst disappointment of them all. It literally peeled off in sheets when it got wet off of a plywood boat. I don't know how it would work for poor man's fiberglass, but I'm not willing to have that happen. So I just gave up using it. But that right there is how you do your fabric patching. Go over your foam patch. Once you get it painted all down, all the edges in particular, you can sand. That's the other thing you can do. Some people want a really smooth finish. To me, if you read any or watched any of my stuff, you know that it's not the most critical thing in the world to me. It's a boat. But, you know, people doing teardrop trailers in particular really like to have them look good. I understand that. So if you sand after the paint dries and then maybe do another coat or two, you can get a much smoother finish. I have never bothered to take the time with anything I've ever built, but if you go on YouTube or if you look in my Instructable, I actually share a video where somebody did that and did a very good job on the teardrop trailer. I think using Rust-Oleum and sanding between coats. So just simply like this, and I'm going to just continue working my way over the hull and adding paint places that's been scraped off, and then this will be ready. I'm actually planning on giving this boat to my nephew. He'll be happy. Now looking at this, it's been a few minutes since I painted, and it's one of the reasons I like to use darker colored or more brightly colored bed sheets instead of just the white or some sort of a solid color, because it really helps you see where the paint has soaked in to the point that, like right there, the stripes are coming through from that red, white, and blue film. And over here, I'm starting to see the blue from the Thomas the Tank Engine. That means that that fabric has absorbed most of the paint, and it's starting to dry out. The surface is starting to dry out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with more paint on top until that disappears, and that's how you know that the fabric has been filled. And that's the whole poor man's fiberglass idea of soaking the fabric completely with paint, filling it so that it's completely filled. It won't rot. Paint can't come out. Fabric won't have the water getting into it and rotting it. And that's what actually preserves both sides of this, the paint and the fabric, working together to create a not only waterproof but a stronger barrier to protect your foam.